The assault breacher vehicle is a combat engineer's best friend and looks suspiciously like those vehicles that like to fight each other. Drop the beat. The M1150 Assault Breacher Vehicle, or ABV, is the US military's mine and explosives clearing vehicle. The ABV is based on the M1 Abrams chassis and is the biggest, baddest combat engineering vehicle the US Army currently fields. But before we get into the specifics of what makes this vehicle so beloved by ground troops, you have to first understand the significance of what this vehicle was designed to accomplish. You see, the ABV was designed to be an all-in-one solution for doing one thing and one thing well: reducing obstacles. Now stick with me here, because as an engineer, I'm gonna nerd out here for a bit. We're about to get into what makes this ABV such a force multiplier. Now for those of you who don't know, a breach is where an enemy obstacle is in the way, be it a minefield, a tank ditch, a wire obstacle, berm, whatever, and we need to create a lane for friendly forces to rush through to the enemy side. If that sounds overly simplistic, that's because it is. Successfully conducting a combined arms breach is one of the most difficult tasks a unit can conduct in large-scale combat operations. There are a ton of moving pieces, and success rate both in execution and survivability of troops and equipment is very low. To successfully pull off a breach, every engineer has the acronym SOSRA burned into their brain matter. SOSRA, which stands for Suppress, Obscure, Secure, Produce, and Assault, are the fundamentals of breaching that have to happen if you want to have any hope of making it to the other side. Now, here's where it gets even more tricky. While the tanks and artillery are making the enemy think twice about their life decisions, the engineers are tasked with reducing the obstacle and being the first ones to assault through that breach. Actually, my guy, the engineers don't conduct the breach alone. The breach task force is generally comprised of engineers and tanks, with the tanks being the ones who quite often identify the leading edge of the minefield and assist the engineers by securing the breach site while they work on reducing it. Look here, my guy, I done already made a video about the Abrams. Check that one out after this one. Let the engineers have something for once. Now keep in mind that these obstacles are usually complex in nature, meaning they aren't just a couple of strands of wire that we can just casually move out of the way. Nah, these guys are dug in like an Alabama tick and probably have minefields, wire, and tank ditches several hundred meters deep that we have to get through. No pressure. And to further complicate matters, see, I told you this was going to be a tough problem to solve. Each obstacle requires a different method for reduction, and you still have to proof the lanes, and you have to mark them. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with proofing, this is when you verify that you have done the job of removing mines correctly. Because the last thing you want is to move a bunch of mines out of the way, only to find that you missed one, and now you have a multi-million-dollar M1 Abrams detonate on top of it. Now the final step is to mark the lanes. You've just created a gap a couple of meters wide that you have to direct dozens of pieces of armor through that are spread out over hundreds of meters. They won't know where to go unless you show them. This is a lot of pressure to put on a small group of engineers, not to mention the sheer amount of time this can take. Oh, and by the way, they're doing all of this while getting shot at and heavily targeted by enemy direct and indirect fires. What we needed was an all-in-one solution that could reduce, proof, and mark lanes and can do it faster than all the options before it. That sounds like a wish list that only a child would come up with. So naturally, this meant that the only component capable of pulling this one off was the Marine Corps. Fast forward to 2010, and the ABV was rolled out into service. Complete with an M1 Abrams chassis, the ABV shares the same 1,500 horsepower gas turbine engine. Essentially, they just ripped the turret off an M1 and just shoved a crap ton of C4 into its place. More on that later though. God bless the Marine Corps and their crayon blueprint sketches. Now, all that power propels this 72-ton beast up to 45 miles per hour on paved roads or 30 miles per hour cross country. But those aren't the only staggering figures the ABV shares with the Abrams, because it also shares its hilariously laughable fuel economy as well. Did I say fuel economy? Let me rephrase that and say fuel consumption, because just sitting at idle, the ABV can burn up to 17.3 gallons of fuel per hour. Now, for my non-military folks who might be thinking, well, why would we just sit there at idle and burn all that fuel? Well, I don't know either. No, seriously, that's just how it be sometimes. Just hurry up and wait, right? That's what we do in the Army. Fuel consumption, be damned. Now, if you thought that sounds bad, just wait until you get the death beetle moving. On smooth road, consumption leaps up to 44.6, and cross country, it can reach, wait for it, 56.6 gallons per hour. Not 56.6 miles per gallon, 56.6 gallons per hour. You'd be lucky to get 250 miles of range out of this thing, and that's being conservative. But you didn't click on this video to learn about military logistics. No, you want to know what kind of heat this thing is packing and why I am so unreasonably excited to talk about this thing. So let's get the boring stuff out of the way. Does it have a gun? Yes. What kind? An M2 Browning heavy machine gun. What caliber? A big one. How much ammo does it hold? Enough. Alright, cool. Move on. Now here's the stuff you really want to know. The ABV can do it all. It can reduce, proof, and mark, all without having to dismount a single soldier on the ground. Actually, sir, combat engineers still have to get out and place FAR recognition markers like VS-17 panels so tanks who are coming to the breach know exactly where the point of penetration is. Yes, I'm aware of that, my guy, but we aren't talking about that, are we? We're talking about the crap that's going on deep in the heart of the Devil's Tea Party, the breach actual. Once the ABV pulls up to an obstacle such as a minefield, it gets some standoff, opens its bay doors, and unleashes its party trick. Each ABV is equipped with 2 rockets, each tethered to a MICLIC. The M58 MICLIC, or Mine Clearing Line Charge, is a 350-foot line charge that contains 5 pounds of C4 per linear foot. As the rocket takes off, it uncoils the line, which allows 1,750 pounds of C4 to stretch out over a minefield. Think about one of the most bad A firecrackers you've ever seen in your life. Now once detonated, the line charge creates a shock wave which blasts the mines and wire out of the way. This is the reduction part of the breach. Next, the breach lanes need to be verified safe or proofed for the tanks to go through. This is where the plow comes into play. The ABV can be equipped with 2 different plows, with the preferred variant being the full width mine plow. Using this plow, the ABV is able to dig down and turn up the earth, ensuring any mines that weren't blown out of the way are safely pushed aside. Now the final piece of the puzzle is to mark the lane. While the ABV is pushing through and proofing the lane, it can use its built-in lane marking system to shoot lane marking poles into the ground. Fun fact, if I remember correct, I think each of those poles costs around $200 a piece. I could be wrong on that. My hand receipt was pretty eye-wateringly large, so I tried to put that out of my memory. Now, if you think a vehicle this specialized wouldn't be good for much other than large-scale combat operations, well, you'd be wrong. You'd be surprised how many uses you can find for a vehicle with 3,500 pounds of C4 on tap. ABVs have been deployed all over to reduce heavily mined areas, which have allowed friendly forces to move about without incident. Now, if I had one tiny criticism about the ABV, it'd be that the HLA or high lift adapters are often a point of failure. The HLA is where the plows get attached on the front, and I've covered up many hydraulic leaks in the field due to this part failing on me. Crap, did I say cover up? I meant I reported it to higher headquarters, dug up the contaminated soil, and disposed of it in a responsible manner. Yes, that is what I meant to say. That is what I did, in fact. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you want to learn more about the combat engineers that operate this big armored beetle, then check out the next video. And if you want, go ahead and like and subscribe. CT6 out.